Welcome to the Coworking Values Podcast. I'm Emily Breeder. If you're a community manager struggling with reaching your audience, our latest offering is designed for you. In this 3-month cohort, we will help you build your community, learn practical strategies, and stay motivated with personalized guidance. Join us to transform your workflow and strengthen your community management skills. Look in the description of this podcast for more information on how to sign up. And now, here's a word from our sponsor. This podcast was brought to you by Nook Wellness Pods. Nook Pods provide on-demand, semi-private areas for working environments and for higher ed events. They combine noise and light management in a personal space where people can withdraw to recharge, focus, and connect better. Perfect for flexible co-working spaces. See more about this product in the show notes. We've got Guenaelle Watson on today. Guenaelle, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, sure. I came to the UK about 25 years ago. I initially studied marketing and consumer behaviors, and I started working in the built environment about 20 years ago, initially in marketing and communication, but I've always had a passion for interiors. I did an interior design course, and on a personal level, I did 3 refurbishments, and I've always been fascinated by how environments shape our behaviors and influences how we feel as humans. And I transitioned to workplace strategy about 5 years ago. And my passion really for research, data, behaviors led me to workplace strategy and workplace consultancy. So I now head up a workplace consultancy, 360 Workplace, which is part of Forefront Group, and we are workplace specialists. So we help our clients define their needs through data collection and engagement, and our sister company area design and builds environments, and we also have a furniture division.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you're connecting neurodiversity to design?
So I suppose neurodiversity is designing for all and making sure people feel comfortable in any given environment. Um, we have about 15 to 20% of the population who are neurodivergent, and creating spaces where everybody can thrive is what drives us, and make sure people feel comfortable irrespective of who they are, and make sure that environments are inclusive, support well-being, and actually encourage people to come and work together, because working together and working as part of a community is good for our mental health. So our driver is really to make sure that people feel comfortable in spaces and enjoy being there and do their best work and create connections.
What are some of the ways that presents in design, especially for well-being and mental health?
So it's really interesting because I suppose we are all different, and when it comes to neurodiversity, there's such a huge range of different profiles, with different requirements, different specificities, because neurodiversity, as you know, covers anything from ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia. There's also acquired neurodivergence, things like dementia, Parkinson's, and 70% of disabilities are invisible. So when it comes to designing environment for neurodiversity, it starts with engaging with people, understanding their preference, understanding their likes, understanding the type of environment where they can thrive in, understanding their challenges. So we always start with engaging. And whether it's a co-working space or an office space, the same principle applies, is understand your users, understand your user group, and design around that. One of the principles of designing for neurodiversity is giving choice and flexibility, and that's probably the most important aspect, is making sure that you've got a range of different environments that people can choose from. Some people like stimulation, some people like environment that are calmer. So part of the keys, I suppose, zoning the environment, so where you can find an environment that suits your needs, irrespective of what your working preference is, but also looking at activity-based working and having a range of different workplace settings, whether it's a booth, whether it's a quiet space, a well-being space, a space where people collaborate. And it's really designing around providing a wide range of different settings and choice, really. It all comes down to choice. But of course, there's more specificities around design because neurodiversity is around senses and it affects how we perceive environments. So, looking at everything that affects our senses, essentially, whether it's light, acoustics, um, whether it's ergonomics, um, and looking at color patterns and creating environments where people can find comfort, essentially.
Are there any common answers you get when you collect data for things that people request the most?
Yes, it's really interesting because when we collect data, um, there's usually three aspects that people either find challenging or want to change or want to have control over. And part of, I suppose, designing for new diversity is giving people some level of control over their environment. So, one is temperature, and everybody's got, we know, for example, there's uh, temperature affects different people in different ways. So, temperature is always one element where people are either think it's too hot or too cold. Um, Lighting is another one. There's generally a preference for daylight and having control over um, lighting and having the ability to adjust lighting to your preference. Um, and so there's generally lighting, um, sound, uh, but also having access to environment that feel natural. So access to plants, for example, and having an environment that kind of mimic nature and having gives us that sense of comfort, and that's through biophilic design.
Now, one of the reasons that we wanted to talk to each other was about the Design for Neurodiversity event on September 17th. Can
Yes.
you tell me a bit how you got involved with that and what the event's about?
So I got talking to Bernie about diversity and inclusion and neurodiversity, and we'd done a recent event around neurodiversity, and we thought it'd be great to actually organize a bit of a workshop with some of our designers to I suppose discuss what is best practice when it comes to neurodiversity, but also workshop and have a session where we can co-create and discuss best practice and how to create an environment that really supports neurodiversity and what are really the key considerations um, and understanding what makes people thrive and what environment can we create to provide a great experience and support neurodiversity. So the event will be partly sharing best practice, but also a bit of a workshop, interactive workshop with participants where we can co-create together a kind of an example best practice environment.
Is there a best practice for how to approach people that were this kind of designing for neurodiversity is not even on their radar and maybe they have a space? Is there a good way to approach them that you can give some advice about?
Yes, there's a lot of research, I suppose, that's been done around neurodiversity, and we're still in the education phase. I think people may have heard the name neurodiversity, but don't necessarily understand what it entails and also the impact it can have on people. And I remember when I started my career, we were creating spaces, and it was, I suppose, more around aesthetics of the space rather than human centric. And what new diversity is really creating environments for people that are that are human centric. And the data is there to prove it. I mean, there's 15 to 20% of the population who is neurodiverse, and probably actually in reality is probably a lot more than that because not everybody is comfortable coming forward. And and I suppose that may skew the data. But it's such a large part of the population that you can't ignore it, and the data is there. But also, designing and best practice for neurodiversity means everybody can feel comfortable, whether you're you fall under the umbrella of neurodiversity or neurotypical, because it's generally best practice around what you do with lighting, what you do with color, what you do with acoustics, biophilic design, air quality. It's all best practice essentially. So it's a good reminder that if we adopt those principles, we're actually going to cater for everyone.
Are there some benefits that you can describe for business owners that may be kind of on the fence about redesigning their space for neurodiverse populations?
Sometimes some of the changes um, are fairly easy to put in place and implement. Um, and there's always some quick wins that you can change. And we've seen with some clients, usually we talk about strategies that can be implemented almost overnight, and that don't necessarily have a huge cost implication. Um, and that is usually easier to implement than redesigning an entire space. Um, and there could be things like repurposing certain spaces. So if you've got a meeting room and you don't have a dedicated well-being space, for example, some spaces can become a meditation space. Um, it could be about painting a wall a certain color. It could be about adding some tactile element or some acoustics treatment which don't necessarily need to be a complete redesign, or things like limiting visual clutter, for example. There's a lot of strategies that you can adopt that are um, fairly easy to implement and don't need a complete redesign.
Sure, but beyond that, are there statistics about specific business benefits? Because some people only really respond to, okay, but how is this going to affect my bottom line? Is it going to make me any more money? I I know for myself the answer to this, but I would love to hear you describe it for our listeners.
There's always financial benefits to making sure an environment um, is is an environment that's comfortable for everyone, and there's undoubtedly an impact on the bottom line. Um, because ultimately, when people feel comfortable in your space, they will stay longer. They will recommend to their friends, um, and that's the benefit, I suppose, is when it comes to a co-working space, is people um, people are actually become your best advocates when they feel comfortable in the space. And I saw a statistic this morning that I think only 39% of co-working spaces have 90% occupancy. Now, I think in terms of improving occupancy, good design can certainly support that, and there's other layers like the hospitality element, etc., and the various amenities. But certainly, having an environment where people feel comfortable um, does impact occupancy ultimately.
Yeah, definitely. Word of mouth marketing is incredibly powerful and it's very
Yes.
hard to implement. That's a good way to approach it. Do you
It
have
is.
do you have any like personal stories of how you got involved in this field?
Yes. Well, I suppose you always have around you people who have different requirements, people who are neurodiverse in your close circles. And I've always had a passion of creating spaces, or certainly working with clients on creating spaces where people feel comfortable, um, because ultimately that supports productivity, that supports building a community, that supports um, even things like sustainability, etc. So from a personal point of view, I think a space is far beyond than just aesthetics and occupancy. It's about spaces that can support our well-being. And I think that there's an utopia of in the future we will leave spaces feeling healthier than we when we got in. And I think that's probably what drives me is creating healthy, inclusive environments.
Can you tell me about some of the workshops that you have designed for the 17th of September event?
Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, we'll do um, co-creation. Usually our workshops involve a lot of interaction, participation, post-its, people discussing different topics, putting people into groups, looking at best practice, looking at a bit of creative input from the participants, which is always really fun element where we'll ask people to, if you were to design an environment from scratch, what would you do and how would you go about it? And we have, design skills in house, and we'll support the process of, and then maybe there'll be a bit an element of competition, but I don't want to divulge too much. But I think, yes, putting people into groups and a bit of a design competition based on creating the best neuro-inclusive environment.
So are co-working space owners the best people to come to this event, or also space managers? Who else? Who is the audience for this event?
The audience is anybody who works in or manages, runs, owns a co-working space, and really understanding what drives behaviors, what supports people, what encourages people to come in and increase occupancy. And also, it's in terms of marketing, I think it's a really such a strong message to have inclusive environment that anybody who's involved in the co-working space, this event would be relevant.
Excellent. So that event, everyone who's listening, it's in London in the Blackfriars at the Citizen Emma Hotel on September 17th. It is an all-day event with workshops, and we really hope you'll sign up. The information about that will be in the show description.
Thank you.
Guenaelle, I'd really like to thank you for being on this podcast. I appreciate it, and for talking about all of these things. And I hope we can have you on again soon.